Now, chances are you've heard about an 808, and you might not know exactly what it is, but you know it's got to do with bass, right? This is because it's gone on to be one of the most infamous sounds in modern music. And the term has become synonymous with a deep, rich bass tone that pretty much reverberates in your chest. It's a thing that shakes speakers and irritates your neighbors, probably the best way of describing it. Many artists worship the 808. I'm talking about the likes of Kanye West, who went on to actually name his 2008 studio album 808 and Heartbreaks. You can see exactly why. While the term 808 has become synonymous with bass, it's not necessarily the right use of the word. You see, the true origin is actually an instrument. The reason for this is it started out as a drum sequencer, or a drum machine as many people know it. And to show the range of the instrument, I'd like to point out that the entire set of percussions that was used on Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing was actually done with this device. I'm talking about the Roland TR-808, and it is quite dated, I won't lie. It looks a little bit like this. And as you can see, it's got a ton of buttons on it, and each of these are used to actually program the sounds as well as the timing of the beats that you're producing, if you were to use one. And just to show how dated this actually is, we've got a clip of the original advert that was released back in the 80s. It's absolutely golden.
Introducing the world's most advanced rhythm machine, the Roland TR-808. A revolutionary computer-controlled rhythm machine offering more percussive variations and effects than virtually any other machine on the market. Rhythm pattern visualization, built-in memory, realistic sounds, synchronous performance. Roland, we design the future.
In the dance and hip-hop scene, the TR-808 went on to be iconic, and even to this day, still has a cult following of people who love to produce with its sounds. But it wasn't always the case. You see, when it first started out, people almost universally agreed that it was rubbish. Now, the reason for this was the sounds weren't particularly good. At the time, a lot of the competitors just had better produced samples that were of higher quality and could deliver more authentic snare, cymbal, crash, as well as kick drum sounds. And for this reason, anyone who was established within the industry looked at the TR-808 as a bit of a gimmick, something that produced robot sounds, and just could not see the actual application of this. And the reason being was because electronic music still hadn't really got much of a grounding yet at the time. But while the device received bad reviews, there started to emerge a bit of a market for it. You see, while competitors' devices were around $5,000, the TR-808 at the time was being released for a mere $1,200, much slimmer than their competitors. And for this reason, it was far more approachable for people who were just starting out and trying to build up a studio. Additionally, it was also easy to use. You see, the buttons were very logical in the way that they were set out, and it meant it could be anyone who could approach this specific style of music production and start to create a beat pretty much instantly. And for this reason, it absolutely exploded. Suddenly, the TR-808 was back on the map, and it wasn't long before big-name artists started to actually use the sounds, as it developed more of a following among listeners. And songs exploded with this sound. So that obviously answers the question of how it got popular, but it doesn't necessarily explain why it stuck around for so long. You see, this is just one of hundreds of different beat production tools that have been used by producers. So why exactly did the TR-808 stick around? Well, you see, it had one thing that the competitors didn't. Because it was so simple, it could be easily modified and customized. And for this reason, many producers started to actually tinker with the devices and create their own sounds from it. You see, it could be easily opened up, changed out with transistors as well as different circuitry, and suddenly you've got your own piece of equipment that sounds different from everyone else. And for this reason, producers started to beef up their own gear to create different sounds that would make them stand out. And this is where we see the bass lines of the late 80s emerge that carried on all the way up until the 2000s and where we are today. You see, the 808 has become so ubiquitous over the years that it's almost universally recognized as the sound that drum machines reference as a bass note. Today, the 808 has become the bedrock of hip-hop and trap music, and the anthems that use it, while now creating it digitally, still go on to reference this sound. You see, it's still heavily modulated, altered, but we still recognize it as the 808. And we keep going back to this chest-shaking sound that the 808 has become known for. So next time you hear the term 808, you'll know that commercially it was an absolute failure 40 years ago, and yet it went on to be recognized as the sound that shaped modern music to this day. This has been the secret behind the sounds that you love. It's Backbeat.